Back on August 5th, 2020, we released an episode called Search for Shoes. That episode, we got to hear from a representative named Tracy from Samaritan's Feet. But it broke my heart to know that more than 1.5 billion people are affected by a parasitic disease that are transferred by contaminated soil because they don't have proper footwear. That shoes, they can help prevent against diseases, they can help protect against diseases, they can even help our economic and educational opportunities because we have proper footwear. They can also help an individual pursue their dreams. So if you're wanting to know more about Samaritan's Feet, do so right now. Jump right over to SamaritansFeet.org. But let me give you some crazy numbers to think about. $50 provides a brand new pair of shoes and a message of hope to 2 children. $100 provides a message of hope and shoes for 4 children. This holiday season, as you consider how you spend your money and where you spend it, can I just ask you to consider giving a financial gift to Samaritan's Feet right now? Again, if you're interested in doing that, please visit SamaritansFeet.org. Thank you so much for listening, and Merry Christmas.
Hey, come take a walk with me, not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining us today. Super excited about this interview, this conversation today. By the way, Merry Christmas to you. But it'll be here before we know it. So if you are still have that hard to find person on your list, I have an answer for you on that. You can jump on over right now to opspodcast.com. Look under our store. It's our shoe store. Kind of funny there. But you can look over there. You can look through all of the exciting things that we have to offer. And of course, what a great gift it would be to me if you wanted to leave a review or even drop us a voicemail of what you've been hearing that you really love. I would love that. You can even show us some social media love by liking us, following us, and tweeting us at OPS Podcast Show. Without further ado, let me welcome in our guest today. It's kind of weird to actually be in the living room of a guest today, but that is exactly the case today. So help me welcome him in. He is a long time, I would say now, friend. But we started out as acquaintances. Isn't that nice how relationships kind of have this progression of over time? You start out kind of as like you see each other across the room and then you kind of welcome him. And then the next thing you know, you're hugging. I am, of course, talking about my very good friend, Tom. Tom, how are you today?
I am well. And if you really struggle with Christmas gifts, Patrick Mahomes jerseys should be on your website.
I will be sure that we somehow link a Patrick Mahomes website during the holiday season. How about that?
Oh, ho, ho.
Tom is a longtime Chiefs fan, so that is the reference there in case you were wondering. I am still coming to grips with Tom's fandom for the Kansas City Chiefs, but, you know, people could say the same thing about my fandom with North Carolina, so we are kindred spirits as far as that goes because we both root for teams not in our home state. Tom, my very favorite question to ask people when they come on the show is this, and that is, what size shoes do you wear?
11 and a half.
All right, 11 and a half. And is there a style or brand you like more than another?
I'm a cheapskate, so I get the Sketchers at Costco.
You get the Sketchers at Costco?
Slip-ons, no shoe strings.
No laces.
Yeah.
No worrying about like, what is it, the, loop, swoop, and pull? Is that none of that?
None of it.
Why slip-ons of all things?
They're comfortable. They're easy.
Okay. All right.
I'm low maintenance.
Are you really in low maintenance? I want to push on that. I feel like
not if you ask anyone else.
I was just gonna say, I feel like that's not the right answer to that question. Well, that's awesome. So Skechers, 11 and a half, love that. So Tom, as we welcome you in, like I said, I've been talking about for quite a while now with a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life, this question, this idea of, are you enough? And so I'm curious, do you have a moment or maybe an experience where you have on any level felt like you weren't enough?
So my parents got divorced when I was 5 years old. Weekends were my father's visitation. So I would sit on the front porch starting at 8 a.m., waiting till about 11 or noon before I finally gave up for 3 or 4 years. Eventually, my mom said, get in the car, and she took me to the bar where my dad's truck was. And she said something like, get over it, he ain't coming. I don't know that I processed in the moment that I wasn't enough, but as an adult, I let that get twisted around the axle in my head. Said that if my earthly father can't love me, neither can my heavenly Father. And Satan played around with that for a long time before. I went to some seminar work up in Eugene. I've done counseling for the last few years. Recently found a church, a men's group, a home group through you. that lie gets told a whole lot less and it's a lot quieter in my head. I remember that vividly, and I remember disliking anyone that's late for a agreed upon time. It reminds me of waiting for my dad. That would be the most prevalent thought, where I didn't think I was enough. I don't believe that anymore.
So let's go back to that young Tom on the porch. If your dad were to show up, what were you hoping to have happen or take place?
I sought out every male role model that could possibly have been in my life, looking for that father figure to play ball with, to swing a bat with, to do all the things my mom eventually replaced my dad with. Play ping pong in the basement, learn how to shoot a gun, learn how to fish, learn how anything would work, whatever you would call kind of a male guided thing. I just wanted men in my life. My uncle was probably the closest thing, but he was 6 hours away in Oklahoma when I was in Missouri. So I saw him once a year, maybe. Then my sister's boyfriends, because my sisters were 5 and 7 years older than me, used to literally give me money to go away. They had their own agenda and they didn't really want to deal with me, but I was just seeking every opportunity to connect with a man because I didn't have any to connect with. So I was just looking for a father figure.
How has that shaped you going forward in your life from that time till now?
I shared what my mom said. That was kind of how I learned to feel, was basically go away, go to your room until you're done with that, because she didn't have the tools to teach me how to do it. I've watched some videos recently about how empathy is developed in the first 2 years. I got a shortage of empathy. I got no bonding because my mom had to go straight back to work, so I didn't get nursed. My sisters watched me. Eventually, I went to daycare or babysitters or whatever. My mom did the best she could with knowing she had to raise a family of 3 by herself as a physical therapist. And she was terrific at provision and things like budgets and managing money with not much of it, and never making me feel like I lacked something, and made things like going back to school shopping really special. But I never learned how to feel. And so as I entered into a marriage, not knowing how to feel, that was very problematic.
You talk about empathy, and I love that word, because when I think of empathy, I think of kind of the crux or the essence of what I try to do on the show, which is the idea of walking in someone else's shoes, that different perspective, that empathetic thought process of knowing and feeling what that must be like. In your mind and in your opinion, can empathy be taught?
Well, I think it can be relearned or learned the video I watched this last week was about the making of new neurons, baby neurons in your brain every day, and how you can wake up with positive self-talk and different things. So I think you can do Romans 12:1-2, renewing of your mind, and probably arrive at some. But I think that foundational piece of empathy from 0 to 2 probably can't be completely restored in a way that would look fully renewed, but I don't know. There's so many things that I don't know. So many things that I know I don't know. So I don't know.
So I want to talk about your dad for a second. Your dad is no longer living, is that right?
He passed away.
So in that moment, if for whatever reason we could somehow through the span of just how life works, we could get a moment with you and your dad where he actually did show up, what would you guys go and do together at this moment?
I don't know. I'd probably go bowling. That was the one thing that united us through talent. It's kind of a sad realization that he could do 2 things at the bowling alley. He could drop me off and let the bowling alley be my babysitter, where I got an enormous amount of talent at bowling, and he could sit at the bar and drink, so he could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So I guess I still, when I shoot a 300 game or I shoot an 800 series, I still want to pick up the phone and call him to tell him, like the proud son. So I guess we would do that. But what I'd really like to do, because so many people, he was sober from when I was 18 until he died. So from my entire adult life, he was in AA, doing the steps, being the sponsor for a number of people who all got up, and I wasn't at his funeral or celebration of life, but I was told how many people got up and just praised him for their sobriety and his role in their sobriety and how he walked them through the 12 steps. Yet all of us adult children in 3 families that he was a part of never had him make amends. Now, this is a really smart guy, so he knew the steps. He taught them to a lot of people, and they praised him when he was no longer here, his role in their sobriety. So I would want to ask him, was it just too hard to have that conversation and make amends because I know you knew the step? And so I struggle with that reality of him knowing and not doing. Even the drinking, I can kind of wrap my arms around. Maybe it was hard. I don't know. So I guess rather than go bowling, I'd rather have a conversation about some of the whys.
Why weren't you at the celebration of life?
I don't do death very well. I don't know why. It's emotionally challenging for me. I've been in an industry where clients have died for the last 18 years, and I went to one celebration of life, and the guy was essentially the closest thing to a father I had in my adult life. He helped me with woodworking. He built me a wardrobe closet that was in my office for 15 years. We did a lot of just talking. I felt compelled to go to his. Obviously, I felt different about my mom's passing than my dad's passing, and I went to hers, and I got up and spoke, and I cried. While it was emotionally challenging, it felt rewarding. And the length of time that I wallowed in my father's passing in comparison to the length of time I wallowed in my mother's passing was extraordinarily longer for my dad than for my mom because I had so much unresolved with him. My mom was a known quantity. She didn't know how to feel. I watched that wall come down through grandchildren and great-grandchildren and getting on the floor with all of them, at least learning how to do different. So that's why I think you can learn some empathy because I watched it with my mom. And I just didn't feel like I left anything unresolved with her. I felt like I could have loved her more. I feel like I could have been less mean to her. There was nothing that I missed doing that I regretted. Whereas with my dad, I wish all kinds of things had been different.
So you being a father now, how has the impact of your dad's life, how has that affected you as being a father now?
Well, I'd like to think it taught me to do different, but only in so many ways. I have so many regrets with my own parenting choices. Some of them were self-inflicted from the military. Like I deployed on submarines for 5 years, and then I was on shore duty for 3. So my children were born during my first shore tour in 91 to 94. My son was born in 1990. My daughter was born in 92. And so I got to spend some time with them in their early years, their formative, just developing years. Started deploying again in 94 for the next 5 years. And I was deployed on 3 different submarines in that 5-year window before I got back to shore duty in 99. And then I made a lot of choices to be away that are very similar to my dad's choices that I have enormous regret for, but eventually, your actions and your words have to align. I've basically been trying to figure out how to restore those relationships for the last 2 to 4 years with varying degrees of success. Would hope that you would learn more from the things that you missed or wanted so much as a child, knowing that your son or daughter probably wants those things too. I feel like I kind of got a do-over with a now 7-year-old grandson and 5-year-old grandson. I think God has impressed upon me that he's a God of restoration. I currently can't connect with that family. Even my daughter has temporarily put some boundaries in place to maintain her own safety emotionally. And I have enormous regrets about my role in my children's lives. How God restored my marriage recently can restore that too. While I don't want instant gratification on this, I want the work to be real. It's just disheartening as we approach Christmas. It might not be this year. That's sad.
First off, we're obviously talking about some very heavy stuff, so thank you. Thank you for your transparency on that, Tom. I appreciate that. Often conversations go this way. It's always exciting to me on some level, but also hard on some levels because it's so heartbreaking to hear someone's heart. But I do believe in the power of what God can do with the spoken word. I believe he can do powerful things, and I believe he has, even with my little bitty podcast. In this moment right now, if you had an opportunity, for whatever reason, your kids were able to pick this up, listen to this, what would you want to say to them in this moment if you had an opportunity, if they were sitting with us right now as we sit at your table?
Well, I would probably want to say this isn't the same as all the rest, and those words would probably ring hollow because now they have to see the actions because of the boundaries. That's a little ironically challenged. I would just want them to be receptive to connecting on their terms, being real, lower expectations than I would probably want, just letting God continue to do work in all of our lives. I mean, I'm doing counseling every week. I finally have some prescribed medication that makes it easier for me to feel the extremes. I have a men's group that holds me accountable with my integrity. I have a home group that all cares. I'm just excited about what's next in all of my life. Family, God, and work. It all has been turned on its head in the last few months. For my children specifically, I would want them to just know that I love them with all of my heart and all of my soul, want to be a safe part in their life that they can rely on. And again, those words will likely ring hollow if they were listening because I've said them before and then done differently, but this time is different. That's what I would want them to know so they can have a reference point for, I don't know, the anchor being set. That is the one thing that, in spite of all of my shortcomings that I've kind of exposed in these first few minutes, God can still make me the first saved member of my family's generation, my son and daughter the second, my grandchildren the third. And it reminds me of Bill Hybels' book, Anchorman, where I can see that. And in spite of how Marilyn and I arrived at being married from very broken pasts and still getting to a third generation of salvation, makes me extraordinarily excited about what else God can do in my family.
Do you feel like in some respects your kids perhaps are kind of you? They're waiting on the porch. They're anxiously waiting for dad to arrive. Do you think that has all played a part in their story or their memories?
I think it's part of it. It's more complicated because I didn't have a chemical dependency like my dad. I made choices to be unavailable. I chose bowling. I chose college. I chose pressing into a new job when I retired from the military. So my son shot his first deer without me, learned how to become an adult without me. I think my situation with my children or my children's situation with me, yes, they want a father. Yes, we're essentially that boy waiting on the porch in that respect. My daughter, as an example, heard me shout mean things about a potential divorce with her mom at a time where she was just entering high school. It was an emotional impact on her that I don't even know its entirety now on her. I think it's probably more complicated than just the boy on the porch. That saddens me because I was the boy on the porch. I wanted a dad. I made those choices. And so that's why my son said recently, your words don't align with your actions. I have to protect my family. Instantly, that was created anger and hurt. The more I got away from that phone call, it gave me, wake-up call is probably the wrong word. It gave me a wake-up call to not settle there, not be okay with just being separated and not fixing me. And a lot has happened since July, August.
Greatest lesson that your dad probably taught you was what?
I have no earthly idea, but the one that comes to mind, even though I didn't really learn it in real time. So I had a couple $1,000s burning a hole in my pocket at 16 years old. I had to have this 66 Ford Mustang. The first one I looked at had a hole in the floorboard large enough to pass a six-pack of beer through. Don't ask me how I know that. It was a rust bucket that needed a lot of help, but I had to have it. And my dad tried to teach me a life lesson that I've tried to teach my own children, which is there'll always be another one of those, whether it's a car, a house, a dress, whatever it is. I swear I've never learned the lesson. I always want the first one that I want. even though I observed that life lesson being important based on my own missteps along the way. That's the one that comes to mind. I'm also amazed by how few things I really took away from that relationship.
So we'll make it about you then. What's one lesson you hope your kids learn from you?
I hope my kids learn that there is an opportunity for unconditional love from the right person waiting for them out there. I believe my son has found that from his wife. My daughter hasn't met her future husband, so I hope that she knows that God has her future husband waiting for her that won't be a duplicate image of me, that the things that I was ill-equipped for, she can find that person that fills in her gaps. Relationships are the most important thing, whether it's bringing someone to the Lord, whether it's holding the hand and teaching your little one how to feel, which my son and daughter-in-law do it extraordinarily well. I did not learn how to do that. I'm always amazed when I observe it. Hopefully they just learn that, relationships are where it's at. I used to make bowling and things, and even Kansas City Chiefs football games on Sunday, I would make more important than my family. I still enjoy a Chiefs game on Sunday, but I can watch a recording. I can go to church and miss kickoff. All things I would have made non-negotiable prior to this most recent recovery and reconnection with God and my wife. Our pastor at our past church used to say, make the main thing the main thing. And slowly I'm able to make the main thing the main thing. And I would just encourage my children who are already making the main thing to don't forget that, to look for that in their mates or their teammates and how to instill it in their children. I'm just excited about watching that and eventually being a part of that.
I think for me, when I look at you and I look at our journey, our little road that we've been on together, which has been very small, for whatever reason, I don't know, there's just been this gravitation for me to be in your life. And I think part of it is because I see a man that has done some challenging things, had some rough roads, some hard mountains to climb. But I look at you still holding on to integrity and holding on to, I want to do it better than I did yesterday. Does that resonate with you at all?
Well, I guess I would hope that most of that is true. It hasn't always been. I think it definitely is a goal, but I think the way God works, our connection, he took a pending anniversary when we hadn't communicated in over, 10 years, somehow encouraged me or goaded me or reminded me to say, hey, your anniversary's in 2 days because Mark Zuckerberg told me. Then you show up at my office on my anniversary, and I didn't know that my world was imploding. I had an inkling what I was going through at work might not have a perfect outcome, but I didn't know what was about to happen. I don't have many friends because of my standard for friendship. I make it hard to be a friend because of my standards, because of that kid waiting on the porch. If you're late, that's one strike kind of nonsense. You and I probably couldn't be much different. Connecting me with the men, connecting me with the church, connecting me back to God was one of those events that didn't require us to have an entire amount of commonality. I've had a lot of mountaintop type experiences with the Lord, but this one was subtle. This one was, I thought it was about you. And then I quickly discerned that it was about me. I quickly discerned it was about reconnecting me with my Heavenly Father, being the prodigal son, eventually learning how to do that prodigal son relationship with my own son and daughter. I call it our coincidental meeting, which there are no coincidences, was orchestrated by our Heavenly Father for both of our benefits. I needed a friend. I needed a men's group. You needed a friend. We even joked about, wouldn't it be cool if you could buy the NFL Sunday ticket and we could have a ministry on Sunday. And the following week, I got an email from DirecTV, who I butt heads with every year trying to negotiate $100 off of their stupidly high price. They sent me an email. It's on us this year. And I didn't play fantasy football. Most of the Chiefs games are on network television. I really didn't need it this year. I was like, oh, now that's funny. This is the one year I probably could have lived without it. It gave us an opportunity to connect with pizza and football, continue our friendship, go to man camp, just all of the things that, I wouldn't have had an inkling of on August 16th, 2 days before your anniversary on the 18th, 4 days before mine on the 20th. I'm amazed by all the little details that God didn't ignore since July as it relates to you, me, my wife, my family, all of it. There hasn't been one detail that he ignored or found too small to deal with, because I used to think I couldn't have my job and be part of a group of men that talked about sexual integrity, because it would get back to my clients. Now, I joke at how seamless it was for God, and it's not even funny. It's just really awesome, which is, well, that's your problem? I'll take your job away. It's no longer a problem. You can go be part of any men's group you like. And he saved my marriage in the same action. My wife was struggling with how I was swirling to a low point, and he taking that job away made it so quiet we could connect every morning. I could really do the work with the weekly counseling that some of which I'd been going through the motions on, in spite of the fact that that includes the window of time where my son needed to put boundaries in place. It was really the beginning of the end of me swirling down the drain, needing to reconnect with God. It may take a while for my son and his family. That's disappointing, but it was self-inflicted. I don't think it's permanent. And so I'm excited. I'm not dwelling on the sadness. I am excited about the what's next for the first time that I can remember, because I'm not a terrifically optimistic guy by nature.
I love that too. I love that a lot. I love the fact there's the idea of looking back of where you've come from and really knowing that there's still more to come. To me, I think that's such a powerful lesson to be learned there for sure. I'm curious about this question. Has your relationship or lack of relationship at times with your dad, has that affected your relationship with God and how you view God? And if so, how?
Well, I think I said at the beginning, Satan took my reality with my earthly father and then got inside my noodle and said, your own earthly father couldn't love you. How could your heavenly father love you? And he was the hamster in that wheel for a long time. It is what allowed me to veer off course when we moved back here. And I don't even remember when it happened. It was the casting crowns, slow fade reality that I just became the least common denominator everywhere I went. As it related to acceptable social behavior, I became the world. So at bowling on Tuesday nights, you would often find pornographic playing cards in my hand, playing a card game, or oogling at somebody, or having one more beer than I knew was okay and still driving home. Just all kinds of nonsense while I was slow fading. Yeah, I think it's another opportunity for me to be amazed at God's restorative powers as it relates to all of these relationships. Because we have a saying in my industry, but we say it's not what you did, it's what you do next. Now, I use that phrase to, basically encourage clients not to look in the rearview mirror, but to look through the windshield. It's real. It's true that you could wallow in what happened. I think you miss an opportunity to focus on the restoration, the work. I almost spent an entire year in counseling that amounted to a car payment and didn't even do the work. And so through all of this, I've been able to engage the work. Temporarily sad that there's pretty much only one person in my family circle that can see that this time's different. This time is different. That's a phrase I tell my clients never to say, that the 07 to 09 market movement was different. It was going to collapse the market. I tell them those are really dangerous words to say, because historically the market finds a way back. And for the next 10 years after 09, it did nothing but go up. And I'm not trying to compare my life to the stock market, but the philosophy behind not focusing on where you've been, but where you're going and actually engaging the work. I hate praying for patience for fear of actually getting it. We joke about it on Monday night at our home group. John and I, and whenever someone struggles to figure out what they want to pray for, patience. I am learning an extraordinarily detailed lesson about patience as it relates to restoration. Some of it will come very quickly. Some of it will take a lot harder work, but don't turn away from the work and don't turn away from God helping you through it. For weeks, the first 15 and the Jesus Calling devotions somehow overlapped with the prodigal son early in following my dismissal from work. I could have easily missed, I don't know how you'd miss, 7 days in a row of prodigal son. I might have missed it for 5 days. God's like, you still haven't learned it. And so I'm going to learn the lessons to love my family unconditionally, no matter how long it takes, all the time it takes for them to clearly see the words I am saying are aligned with my actions in that this time is different.
So you look back over that time span, that July time span, that August time span that we're talking about, most recent. What do you feel like was that moment that it got the darkest and that you knew that you needed to find the light?
Well, so I got terminated on September 1st for thinking it was okay to have passive-aggressive leadership styles with my assistant. And so I got told on September 1st, which in all likelihood should have been my lowest, basically at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that we're not confident in your ability to lead and effective immediately, you're terminated. Before I could push the button on my Bluetooth earpiece, my regional leader, another advisor, and a locksmith met me at the front door of the office I had been in for 18 years. And I embellish this to a small degree, but basically perp walked me out of the office with whatever I could put into my Subaru legacy in the moment. But the lowest, so that was a Wednesday, September 3rd, I went back with a friend with a horse trailer, my wife, and me, and we met my regional leader at the office to essentially empty 18 years of my life back out of that office. That was probably the lowest emotional day because I didn't know what was next. I was emotionally celebrating the clients that celebrated those 18 years with me that I might not be reconnected with. I was smiling or laughing about how something I was carrying out to the horse trailer came to be there or who it was tied to. And so that was emotionally a challenging doesn't even encapsulate it. It was a day where if I hadn't been on the medication that I was on, I would have processed bad outcomes. Now, my bride knew that I had only been on antidepressants for a short period, maybe 4 or 5 weeks. She also knew that it was working, but she was also smart enough to take the gun out of the house so that I couldn't process the easy bad outcomes on a day like that. It was that bad of a day emotionally. It was made a lot easier by who was there holding my hand. My wife, my friend Brian, who basically dropped everything to show up with a horse trailer and make multiple loads from my office to my home, even took me to lunch when we were done, never once judged me for how it came to be because he was an actual client. Now, I was one of his and we were friends and it was more complicated than a client-advisor relationship. He just showed up. He was literally going on a vacation at 2 o'clock and unloading my last load at my barn at 1:30 on a Friday when he could have easily said, no, I can't help. All of that doesn't go without an extraordinary amount of memory fondness, even though it was a low point. It was a low point where a lot of work originated. It wasn't all, from a memory perspective, it wasn't all terrible. It was just such a shocking day that it could have defined the old Tom. The new Tom was able to focus on to where we were going. I hate to simplify it that much because much more complicated than Marilyn holding my hand or Brian holding my hand or showing up. It was all of the work that God was doing in that moment through our church, our men, our home groups, God being there every day, caring enough about all the little details, including knowing I was going to have a rough day on September 3rd before it all began.
I think that's the power of community. That's the power of even a marriage, that helpmate, that person that can walk beside you when things get the hardest and the darkest. Tough stuff there, Tom, for sure. I want to ask you one thing, and then I want to try to see if we can have some levity, because you're actually kind of a funny guy. You actually have some funny jokes from time to time. Some of them are lame, but most of the time they're pretty funny. But looking back, again, from where you started on that porch to where you're going now, if someone was going to write the end to your story, what do you think that end story would look like and feel like?
Well, I always think about the poem, the dash. The beginning and the end are pretty defined, but I would much rather focus on the dash, all the stuff in between. So I hope the finish to this story is he continued to walk with God, that he was a man that liked to disciple other men, whether it was in finance or addictions or whatever you're struggling with, without judgment. Continued to get a second shot with those little ones to watch. I mean, I've missed first goal scorers at soccer games, a few other things. So I hope instead of being about what I missed in this little short window of time, it would be about what I enjoyed once we were able to have complete restoration. Being there for their weddings and my first great-grandchild being born. Figuring out how to be the great-grandpa to that fourth generation of anchor people. Marilyn thinks we better be ready for the rapture pretty quick. So I hope it would be that I was ready, because my imagination is really limited. Like, if I let God's thinking be in my brain would literally explode instantly. I just hope that my daily actions between now and the end would be that I could do as much of the kingdom work as God puts in front of me, not let my earthly desires allow me to say no anymore, because I'm really gifted at saying no.
Are you enough to be loved?
I am. During my wings work up in Eugene years back, I made a kind of a life-affirming statement that I am lovable, open, and receptive. It might have been a projection in the moment. Most of that work was done after my father passed, and I was kind of like, if you remember Top Gun, when Goose died, Maverick...
Wait, Goose dies in the movie? I stopped watching it after he dies.
So when Goose died, Maverick did not want to re-engage for a long time. And that was, I want to say that was 5 years of my life after my dad passed. I just struggled to re-engage. Like, I had the most significant call reluctance in a field where your employment is based on your ability to call people. I had a teammate that said, "What can I do to help?" And I basically told her to shut up. So she immediately quit being a teammate and became an employee until she retired. Like, I have a really terrible track record with my teammates. God has impressed upon me that you cannot be mean to people, whether it's family, employees, whatever. You need to be nice to people. He's continued to impress that upon me, because I can get in my head and say, well, I'm not lovable either, so it's okay to treat people mean or whatever, however I justify it. Yes, I feel a renewed optimism and truth of I'm lovable, I'm open and receptive, I actually listen, I make eye contact with my wife, I'm present. I even make fun with you to put your phone away and be present. Sometimes I might just look like I'm being funny, but I want to be engaged with whatever's happening in front of me, so that if you're struggling with something, I hear it, or if I'm struggling with something, you hear it. So I feel like I have, even though I might still be preparing to talk when someone else is talking, I'm really striving to listen. And I hope I can do that with my children when we finally reconnect, in a way where they can see I'm doing that, because I don't want to be so selfish that I just want to reconnect for me whenever it happens.
Wow, it's good stuff. All right, so this is our game sense list. I forgot my North Carolina cup. That was the one thing I forgot. I found a Googled dice roll, so here we go. It's on my phone today. No cup present. I'm going to roll this for you and stop. Number 6.
We have 6 senses now?
Well, 6 is the wild card. So 6 is this. You get dinner or a meal of your choice.
Pizza.
You're going to have pizza. Okay, so you're going to have pizza. Who would you have pizza with, dead or alive? One person, dead or alive.
Okay, so I was born in Independence, Missouri, the home of Harry S. Truman. I retired on the Missouri Memorial in Pearl Harbor in 2002, where Harry S. Truman signed the surrender to World War II on the fantail. I was retired on that fantail. I would love to have a meal with Harry. Just talk about the internal struggle of that bombing decision.
You think he stayed awake at night thinking about that one?
I think that guy, his quote was, "The buck stops here." I don't think he struggled with decisions. I think he did what I tell all my clients to do. Take all the time you need to decide. Once you decide, act. Don't get caught up in your head. Don't get caught up in the what ifs. Don't let all the other people twist your ideas or thoughts around the axle. But once you decide, act.
There's powerful words in that, right? Maybe that's true for you too right now, right? In this moment, to not get wrapped up into what's been in the past, but to truly act on the present. I looked up the word restore, by the way, which has a definition of bring back, to repair, to be placed back in a position.
Well, I think all that is happening right now. And even this morning's conversation with my bride, we talked about the idea of renewing our vows because of how much restoration has taken place. I think wanting to capture the momentum of that. I've read a book called Worthy of Her Trust. Even when I read it the first time, I did kind of that going through the motions thing. And so it was only when I rebought that book for another person recently that I started thinking about the foundation building blocks of intimacy. We all kind of want to go to the top block. It's really fun to build those foundational bottom blocks that lead to a wife wanting to renew vows. I am genuinely excited about where we're going. Again, that restore is a good word.
I really like it a lot. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, as I often say, thank you so much for listening today. Just want to remind you of this as we close out today. First off, Tom, before we do that, I do want to say, man, thanks for doing this. Not sure why. I always wonder the why of why people want to come on, but I appreciate what you gave us today.
Pizza.
Oh, is that all it was? It took you just bribing you with pizza?
I'm an easy sell.
Some would say a mark, but we won't go there. But Tom, anyway, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. And guys and gals, as I said a lot, this is your moment, right? This is your moment to really think back. Who in my life do I need to restore things with? Now, it's easy, right? We just came off of Thanksgiving not that long ago. Christmas is on the horizon. Maybe for Christmas this year, instead of buying that Mahomes jersey like we joked about, or maybe some merch with, my logo on it and the amazing clothing that we have there, maybe instead of that, you could wrap up restoration. Now, how do you go about wrapping up restoration? Well, I think it starts with a step. It starts with a step to recognize that you do need to be restored. So maybe that's step one. And maybe there's some other steps that follow, but maybe step one is to say, hey, you know what? It's time I start restoring relationships. And maybe this is the first step. Maybe listening to today, hearing Tom's heart, hearing Tom's words has compelled you to take that step. If you do, please, let me know. opspodcast.com. You can, of course, leave a voicemail, drop me a note. You can reach out to us on social media if you take that step, because I believe that is a very impactful and important step that you should take. So let that be today's lesson or takeaway today as we wrap up. Just remember this as we go. Don't ever forget. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes.